Ole, it's an honor and privilege to speak with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's interesting because the idea of a sequel of something always interests me, because I'm wondering if for you, if it's like a ping pong match of how much you think about the first one, but versus kind of it being its own kind of standalone movie. So with Nightwatch, Demons Are Forever, what was that like for you? Did you focus a lot on the first one? Did you kind of think about it more as its own movie? Like, I'm curious about that.
Well, it had to be able to stand alone and be its own movie, but of course, it was launched out of the original one from '94, which sort of had become my destiny, because that was my debut in filmmaking in '94. And even, a couple of years later, I did an American remake of it with the notorious Weinsteins. But that's a very, very long story and not a very good experience, because the film that was released then was not my movie, to put it short. But it was a fairly good experience anyways. So I would say I was a bit traumatized by Nightwatch, and a little bit scared of readdressing the production design, the whole scenario again, and waited for many, many years to come up with a sequel, even if I wanted to, because I needed a real story. To be frank, I don't think it's difficult to make a scary movie. I don't think it's difficult to get ideas how to scare an audience.
People are scary. If you think about it,
you just have to play a lot in silence for a long time, and then all of a sudden go boom. Then you can actually scare the audience. It's pretty simple, but it's more. When I watch movies to see a horror suspense film, it's complicated to find a story where you actually identify with the characters and you feel for them, that you have an emotional connection to the characters, and that's, I would say, number one, the most imperative for me. But I couldn't find that story in a sequel until I came up with the idea that the actually two leads in an original, who were almost killed by this insane serial killer, they had a daughter, and this daughter grows up in a very, very complicated family where mother had killed herself and dad doesn't want to talk about what actually happened years ago. So now this daughter had, in order to save her family, her dad, she had to go search for the truth. What happened then back 30 years ago? Yeah. And that's a good story, because that's a story that more or less everybody can relate to.
Yep.
Because every family has a white elephant in the room. There's a secret in every family, So I could connect to that and imagine that also the audience would.
For sure. And, you've been in the genre for quite some time, like horror movies, thrillers. I love The Possession. The Possession is one of my favorite films. Natasha Callas has been in the show many times and for other projects, but it always gets brought up. I love that movie. Is it exciting, though, to work in horror movies right now at a time where there is like more of like an interest, excitement around the genre, the popularity of the genre? Like, I'm just curious about that for you.
It would be, it's sort of weird to sit here in Denmark, because in Denmark and Scandinavia, even if we call it Nordic noir, and even if Nightwatch was perhaps one of the first takes on Nordic noir in '94, today it's really, really difficult to make a horror movie in Scandinavia. It doesn't have an audience.
Yeah. Speak No Evil was a Danish film, right? Speak No Evil,
Not many people saw it.
Yeah,
I think it did better internationally than it did in Denmark and Scandinavia. So, and right now I'm making films first and foremost out of Denmark. So it's not a genre that, even if I would love to, I can address in Denmark very easily. So actually, I am. Sometimes I really miss the complication of working with 10 different American producers with 10 different opinions. But at least, you have the resources and you have the capability of actually addressing the genre and go seriously and deep into it.
Yeah.
That I missed a lot. The work on Possession was really great. I had a wonderful collaboration with Sam Raimi on that film.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a wonderful. I don't think it was the best screenplay in the world. I'm glad you love it.
I really liked it. I love the dinner party. I love the dinner table conversations with the fork.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of my favorite. I love that. That's good. It's great stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun to do, definitely.
Yeah, we'll get back to Nightwatch Demons Are Forever. I do want to ask, because you're talking about, movies in Denmark, and you started this interview, a little bit with, movies being remade in the United States and everything. I just wanted to know that we're on the topic. Speak No Evil is one of my favorite horror films of all time. And I'm a creative as well. I just wrapped a short horror film that I produced and wrote. That was one of my favorite films, inspired me to kind of want to do it. They're making obviously a Universal Blumhouse version of this movie. The trailer came out. A lot of people were saying it looked like the original. What do you think about that? Because you've been part of that, right? Where people took your original film and made it into I'm just curious if you wanted to say anything about that.
Well, first and foremost, it's very different for me because I did the remake myself, which I probably shouldn't ever have done. Actually, I did a really good movie, but the movie I did, the American Nightwatch, was not the Nightwatch that was released.
Yes.
I had a cut number 4 of the film, which Steven Soderbergh, whom I worked with, and David Bowie, as a matter of fact, watched. And they loved it, but it was not the film that the producers loved. So, but anyways, I don't think you should ever try to copy yourself and just do the same thing twice. Mm-hmm. But I did that mistake and learned from it. I think there's very, very few examples of American remakes really going well. The Girl with the Dragoon Tattoo, the first film Niels Arden did, is much better than the Daniel Craig movie. I haven't seen Speak No Evil in American, but I think for some reason they are always a bit faded. And I think the flaw is that when American producers watch a European film, they get fascinated because the film has a certain edge to it. It has a certain... It's often very character driven. It's often a little bit, it's edgy. And once they produce it in America, they try to make what they loved, being edgy, they try to make it mainstream. So you always get sort of a faded version of the original, which they originally loved.
Mm-hmm. It's timely, so I had to ask.
Out of anxiety or whatever it is, I don't know, because you need to be, especially today, films needs to be edgy. They needs to be full of surprises. They needs to tell different stories, or they need to stun you, and they need to put some things up in your face where you really didn't expect what was happening. And I think sometimes that American films, especially perhaps today, suffer from being too polite to the audience.
Well, Nightwatch Demons Are Forever does what you said. There's this, oh my God. But I want people to, I'm curious because, May 17th on Shudder. Shudder is kind of incredible in regards to becoming the horror movie fan playground, right? Some of the best horror movies are available on this streaming platform. And I'm so happy that Nightwatch Demons Are Forever going to be on this. What is that like, making a film that you want the audience member to put their phone away? Because you have to pay attention with this movie, right? There's a lot of horror movies you could just put on in the background while you're doing some work and everything. You got to put it away because it's got the thriller. There's a little bit of psychological. What is that like, putting together that on script and then seeing it kind of translate on screen, so to speak? The whole kind of making sure the audience member is active. Because I got that with this film, to be honest with you.
Well, I think as a screenwriter, it's about never become too skillful. Mm-hmm. Because if you become too skillful, it just becomes craftsmanship, and you know exactly what's happening in the scene number 2, number 3, 4th, and forthcoming. Mm-hmm. And I think as a writer, you need to be your own most critical audience, you need to almost start boring yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So you say, I gotta put in some surprises here. I need a new shock. I need a new direction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what I'm trying to, sometimes I look at my own work and say, wow, this is really great. I'm such a great writer, and I'm so fucking bored. So sometimes you really need to tell yourself, not at all. Come on, man. Pull yourself together and become a modernist. Become a modernist. Do something else. Do something really surprising. Something that you thought was something is really, really, truly out of the box. Not only for the audience, but for yourself. And I must say that if you can do that to yourself, I'm pretty certain that you can also hit a pretty large audience, because I don't consider myself being a very complicated art house director with my philosophical existential opinions that I want to put down on the head of my audience. I think I'm an audience as the most.
Yeah. Well, everything starts with an idea, and you can have the most incredible idea, and you can put it in a treatment and lay it all out, right, of what you want to happen. But then, like you said, the making it, flow or making it kind of not flow in terms of the perfect kind of craftsmanship and everything, that's the struggle, right? Like actually writing it up. Because anyone, like, I have so many ideas all the time, but then it's kind of like, how do I make this a film that is a script that can be shot? A treatment can't be used as a script. You know what I mean? I wish, because I'm really good at kind of like labeling it all out, but it's like, that's the struggle, right? And then the directing, you also directed this, and then the shots, I can't even imagine. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think it's so hard to do a screenplay, especially the screenplay you're talking about, the screenplay you're all aiming for. Everybody wants to do the great screenplay. And I think that's actually, unfortunately, it's so rare that you actually watch a really good screenplay. And it's not because I call for people untalented or lazy or anything. It's just because it's so damn difficult. Mm-hmm. It's really a difficult art form. I know some of my good friends are writers or painters or composers, and I tell them, guys, you got the easiest job in the world. I got the hardest job in the world, because I'm not only writing you a novel, I'm also making choreography, I'm also making sound, I'm directing actors,
the shots,
I'm a psychiatrist.
The shots, I think the shots, I know directing is the actors and everything. It's the shots to me. You have like that's the main thing that I realized, that it seems to be the hardest thing, right, about directing sometimes.
Yeah, I find that quite easy.
Okay.
I think it's easy to do the shots. I think it's actually quite easy to direct actors, and it's easy to know where to place the camera and all.
Okay.
I definitely think, being a writer-director, that the hardest part is the screenplay. And someday, some 30, 50 years from now, perhaps I'll get clever at it. I always find that one of the most irritating interviews I ever saw with any filmmaker was an interview with the Coen brothers. And they were sitting there being interviewed, and they said, oh yeah, it's pretty tough to write a screenplay. Sometimes it takes 3 months. And I was thinking, what did they just say? 3 months in a screen? And then they said, yeah, but Miller's Crossing, that was really, really difficult. I think it took like 6 months to write that screenplay. And I was just telling, Jesus Christ, guys, get out of here.
Maybe there's some idea that if you have written a lot of screenplays, maybe you have an idea that you're like, I know how I'm going to write it. So maybe the draft, like the first draft, can be done in 3-4 months, but it doesn't mean it's
no. Yeah, exactly. No, and I think especially within this genre, the thriller genre, it's really complicated. But because there's so many death ends that you can find. There's so many cliches that you can find. I always tell my actors and the guys I work with, I say, we're going to do this thriller now, and thrillers are just so full of cliches. We're going to drive down a highway, and it's full of holes, And in every hole, there's a cliche. And now we just need to actually see if we can divert every hole and see, not hit too many holes,
Yeah.
And that's the whole point, try to always create something original.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I can't wait for people to see Demons Are Forever. Nightwatch Demons Are Forever on Shudder, May 17th. Ole, it was an honor and privilege to speak with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Honor speaking to you, Pete. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.